So I'm going to just talk about the California Environmental Justice Alliance, give you a little bit of background, tell you a little bit about my own story, and then kind of relate it to the California work that we do. So the California Environmental Justice Alliance is a statewide alliance of 6 kick-ass environmental justice organizations. So we have APEN, Poder, CBE as well. We also work with the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment in the San Joaquin Valley, the Environmental Health Coalition in San Diego, the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice in Riverside. I just want to give shout out to all the organizations that contribute so much time to our collective work at CEJA. And what we really do is we bring together all of these great organizations and develop what they want in terms of community vision for their own local communities, and bring that voice to the statewide level to affect statewide policy. So we're really one of the only environmental justice coalitions, organizations that's doing this type of work in Sacramento. And in fact, I was just in Sacramento yesterday. Just backtracking a little bit, so how I got into this work. So my parents immigrated as well. I come from an immigrant family. And I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and I'm still there until today. After college, I wanted to go back to the Philippines to discover my motherland, and learn about the struggle going on there. And it just blew my mind as to what I witnessed in the Philippines in terms of the mining and the extractive mining that was going on, and the environmental impacts, and I visited a Dole plantation, Dole banana plantation, where they were spraying the workers overhead with toxic chemicals as they were working, and they literally had no masks or anything to cover their faces, and so they were inhaling all this stuff. And so I came back. I just came back so committed to changing the system, because it was really about the multinational corporations and the economy and the profit-driven economy that was and the system that was driving what was going on in the Philippines, and then I could relate it back to what was happening here in the United States and California. Growing up, I had asthma growing up, and so did my siblings as well. And so when I just got involved in the social justice world here, it just made sense as to how corporations and how big oil companies and the gas industry really exploits our people, and especially low-income and communities of color, to the extent that we're dying from their operations. And so that's how I got involved in CEJA, in the California Environmental Justice Alliance. And I feel that really the power really needs to come from the people. And so when I started at CEJA in 2008, we really didn't have an energy program at all. At the time, in terms of California politics, the legislature was sort of changing the makeup of it. So enviros, we all know the environmental legislatures are kind of older white folks. Now that has kind of over time has shifted, and so now we're primarily a lot of electeds of color. And back then, energy was something was something back then, and is something now that still is controlled by the utilities. It's controlled by big oil. It's controlled by big gas interests that really put people down at the bottom. Like they don't protect their interests at all. It's really about their bottom line. And so we got involved in energy because the people that we work with that are experiencing environmental racism live right next to the chevrons of their communities, the oil refineries, or the big dirty natural gas power plants, and then the big freeways. There's a lot of kind of the cumulative impact of all these things. Just some statistics. So I work out of the Communities for a Better Environment office in LA, in Huntington Park, not Huntington Beach, but Huntington Park, which is a completely different area. It's one of the most polluted areas in the nation. And back when I got started, they were fighting the Vernon Power Plant, which is a natural gas power plant facility. And the Vernon Power Plant said, it'll be fine if we build this. If we build it, it will only result in 11 deaths per year. 11 deaths per year, and so this was kind of their justification for building it. And so we see these natural gas power plants plants kind of popping up all over the place. So talking about bringing it back to the meta narrative or the narrative, the dominant narrative in California is, we need these natural gas is good. It is a renewable form of energy. It's going to bring jobs into local communities. It's going to improve the health of local communities. But that's not the local experience. That's not, that's just not the reality, and that's just not the truth. Same thing in San Diego. There's a Pio Pico power plant that was being built primarily, again, in a low-income community of color area. That would have cost the customers there $1.6 billion annually, even if they didn't get the energy that was coming from the Pio Pico power plant. So they would still need to pay for this dirty fossil fuel power plant, even if they weren't getting the energy for over 25 years too. And then emitting all of the carbon dioxide and the toxic stuff that was coming out of it. So this is the kind of the lived reality. And so we got into energy because we needed an alternative. We needed a better solution to all of this. And the work that I do, so I'm the lead on our energy and climate work. Some of the examples that we've done to really shift the narrative and shift in terms of the form of who's in power here is we sponsor legislation, we impact legislation. We're also at the intervene at the California Public Utilities Commission. And so we do a lot of policy from the grassroots level. So we ask our, local community organizations and community members, what's your vision for how you want the transformation of your community to look like and the energy to look like? Do you want to own it? Do you continually want to be kind of at the mercy of the big utilities? And the answer is, we all know what the answer is. We all want locally controlled kind of energy. I'll just give a couple of examples of sort of the strategies and the organizing that we do. So a couple of years ago, for example, we sponsored our first legislation. It was called Solar for All. A lot of people were involved in that, and we're still, kind of engaged in that sort of legislative effort. So Solar for All would have brought was going to be a pilot program. It was a legislative effort to bring in local renewable energy into low-income communities. So it was very explicit about that. And we trained up some women leaders. We also partnered with the Women's Policy Institute and trained our women leaders on how to run a legislative campaign. And then we trained the community members about energy, because a lot of our community members, a lot of us, we just kind of pay for our bills, our electricity bills, and never look at what we're paying for. And we're paying for a lot of, transmission lines and things like that, end up going to the pockets of these big utility companies, and we have no idea. And we, along with our great community organizations, developed some great hands-on training modules using Legos and shoeboxes and string. And so it was very hands-on and looked at what your energy structure looks like now, and then what's your vision for it, right? And then we trained up, and so it was mostly, primarily women of color, communities of color that were going toe-to-toe with the utilities in this campaign. And that's kind of been, the organizing effort that we've been using, is really trying to get the communities up to the statewide level and to confront the utilities and to educate our legislators and our elected officials about what's happening on the ground. And then the couple of other things that we do is we also do these things called energy stakeholder convening. So it's not just about the environmental justice organizations and getting them together, but we really need to be in dialogue, as Denise was saying, with our enviro partners and clean tech and labor, because we really need to be working together. And then lastly, one movement building activity that we do every year is we have an annual, what's called a Congreso. So we bring up community leaders, about 150 to 200, like this year we're targeting 250 community leaders up to Sacramento to tell their demand from the elected officials, what they want in terms of justice and policy on the ground. So those are just a few tactics and strategies that we use.